St John's Anglican Church at Cessnock was packed with family, friends and fans, a diverse crowd saluting one of Australia's best-known cowboys. Reg Lindsay had 65 albums and 250 singles, but wrote hundreds more. He won 3 golden guitars, 4 Logies and the Order of Australia Medal for his contribution to country music and the rodeo scene. But today his 3 daughters gave an insight into the man behind the big hat, telling of his generosity and sense of humour.
When I think of the word Dad, I think of Dee, dedicated to promoting country music. A, admired by many, and D, a dreadful jokester.
Reg Lindsay had been out of the public eye for more than a decade after suffering serious health problems. And although his friends say many tributes were paid to him while he was alive, there was plenty more to say today.
I've always counted him as a great friend and one of the most supportive people in the music business I've ever met.
Country through and through.
And it was a top day and a beautiful send-off.
He is one of the people who shaped country music. The thing that was impressive about Reg Lindsay, he had an incredible knack of being able to pick the right songs and make very good records out of them.
Reg was buried at Aberdare Cemetery. He is survived by his wife Ros, daughters Diane, Sandra and Joanne and their families. He was 79. Penny Evans, NBN News.
The Defence Minister, Joel Fitzgibbon, has hit out at the former government, saying they hurried a $1.6 billion contract for new armoured vehicles, trucks and trailers.
This was about the former government rushing into a decision to gain some political capital in the lead up to the last federal election.
Joel Fitzgibbon says at least part of the tender will probably be re-advertised, which could see the budget blow out by up to $300 million.
Some parts of the project we've got to go back to the drawing board. That's going to mean delays, it's going to mean big financial penalties for the Australian taxpayer.
But the opposition spokesman for Defence, Science, Personnel and Training says the minister hasn't explained why the contracts can't be completed.
If there is a need to alter the contract to provide greater protection to our men and women who drive those vehicles, then I would fully support that.
Some of the work was to be done by Newcastle firm Varley, which was going to create hundreds of extra jobs. Both MPs want to limit the impact on the company, but say it's too early to tell how badly it will be affected.
On any given night in Australia, 50,000 young people will be looking for somewhere to sleep, surviving as best they can. Narelle Clay knows their plight all too well. She's been an advocate for the homeless for more than 20 years.
Not having somewhere to go home to, not having people who care about you at home, not having an address, not having somewhere to leave your stuff, all of those things have a huge impact.
The Youth Accommodation Association, which organised the conference, describes the issue as a national disgrace. But right now, there's optimism in the sector as the federal government nears completion of its white paper on homelessness. There's hope of real change.
I think we can do it, but it's going to take a bit of time. It's going to cost a lot of money.
State Community Services Minister Kevin Green says there also needs to be a widening of focus, looking at early intervention.
Why are children detached from their families? Why are they, put out onto the streets? What can we do to support families so that in the long term we'll have less children hopefully impacted by homelessness?
It's hoped more ideas and solutions will come from the conference's 150 delegates as the think tank continues tomorrow.
Extreme didn't do it justice, according to Michael Diamond, who believes the stormy conditions for the finals were easily the toughest he's endured. Qualifying in the six-man final, he missed bronze by a shot.
The visibility wasn't all that great. It was dark, which made the targets look even smaller, in fact. But, it's the same for everybody, and the better guy handled it easier on the day.
Surprisingly, he's heading home later tonight in order to spend time with family before turning his attention to London and beyond as the dual gold medalist continues to target that rare Olympic feat.
You reckon a third Olympic gold medal is still possible?
With some fingers crossed and maybe some shoelaces as well, yeah.
And don't think Diamond will ditch the gun for long. He'll head up a Learn to Shoot Day at his local gun club this weekend. Jim Callanan, NBN News. It's a bold move, but one almost forced on the Gold Coast given injury and suspension to their regular halves, with 16-year-old Jordan Rankin to play tonight in his NRL debut.
We just got to treat him the way we're going to treat anyone else who's going to play there, and obviously if he plays, we're going to get at him anyway.
And that means guys like Steve Simpson will be coming after him. After terrorising Parramatta in his return from injury last week, the Origin forward is likely to be sent looking for Rankin, and Newcastle are making no apologies for that.
Simo's been pretty much a specialist right-sided player almost all his career, but I could see no reason why he couldn't switch over to the left and give that, whoever it is, a bit of hurry up.
Well, you're mad if you don't test someone like that, so we'll see what happens.
As for Newcastle, tonight's game is a chance to win 3 straight for the first time this season and firm up a final spot with some big games remaining before the dust settles on that. Just a month ago, Jade North remained open to an overseas transfer.
I'm here, obviously, with a year, but the transfer window doesn't close until the end of August anyway, so...
Prophetic words, it seems, with a deal thought to be imminent for North with an overseas club. Not the news teammates wanted to hear just days from the season opener, but it was hard to avoid talk of just what his departure will do for their title defence.
It's so hard to replace someone like Jado. He's our captain. He's our leader, so, that player that comes in has got to be just as good, or if not better.
Such a move could net the Jets between $600,000 and $700,000, given Jade North has a year to run on his current deal. But what effect this could have on teammates remaining at Newcastle is also unclear. Ante Kovic and Joel Griffith among the elite players off contract at the season's end.
I'm here definitely for the season, and what happens after that, only time will tell as well.
The Jets open their title defence on Friday night at home against Derby rivals and beaten grand finalists, the Central Coast, but are certain to be missing their Danish import, Jasper Hawkinson, with a calf muscle tear. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
The accident left the Ford Territory almost unrecognisable. Police believe the driver was travelling at high speed along Tudor Street at 7:30 when he hit 2 trees on a median strip.
Certainly speed will be one feature of the police investigation, and we're asking for any witnesses that might have seen the incident to come forward.
After hitting the trees, the car then flipped several times, slamming into 3 parked cars. The impact so strong, it pushed one onto its side. The vehicle finally came to rest near the intersection of Parkway Avenue, 50 metres away. Police are amazed no one else was injured.
It is a very busy street, particularly that time of night. The street's used by people on their way home from work, other people on their way out for meals and evening entertainment in Newcastle CBD.
The driver was taken to John Hunter Hospital but died a short time later. While investigations into the crash have only just begun, one avenue police will be exploring is whether or not the man had a heart attack in the minutes leading up to the accident. A post-mortem was being carried out today and a report will be prepared for the coroner. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
For koala carer Jill Taylor, every patient has a sorry story, victims of disease and cars, but on this rare occasion, a pleasant surprise.
The animals was brought to me, and when I was transferring her into a basket, I said there's rock and roll in the tummy here. So out came a little head that night.
8-month-old Brian is the source of some much-needed optimism for Tillagary carers following a horror month. The pair was left for dead by the side of a road after being hit by a car, but survived, all because a passerby called carers.
Just stop and try and contain the koala if they possibly can, and then call the Hunter Koala Preservation Society and someone will come out and collect the koala.
4 koalas were killed by cars on Lemon Tree Passage Road in July, and with the breeding season upon us, it's a time when they are most active and more likely to be hit.
Look up koala in the phone book is a quick, easy way to go, and use our numbers.
But that alone, Jill says, won't guarantee the Tillagary koala's future.
We need huge areas set aside for sanctuaries, that these animals can live there peacefully and they can breed.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
They pulled 9 people to safety, rescued racehorses and livestock while evacuating dozens of houses in low-lying areas. 30 Singleton SES volunteers worked tirelessly in the June storms last year as the Hunter River peaked at over 14 metres and the town became surrounded by muddy floodwaters.
Most of us spent about 36 hours without much sleep down here. It was one of the most harrowing things.
Today, their commitment to the community was acknowledged by a 19-year-old bank employee. Zimbabwe Mills recently signed up the ANZ Regional and Rural Bank's 1 millionth customer and by doing so won $10,000 to give to the charity of her choice.
I chose the local Singleton SES because of our floods here in Singleton last year. They were a big help in helping families with their evacuating from their homes.
The money will go towards a third vehicle for the crew.
6 months ago we decided to raise money for a new vehicle. This is part of another $10,000 we have in the bank now towards it. So we have $20,000 out of about $40,000 that we require.
They say it's urgently needed during major flood and storm emergencies. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. Lightning struck twice at the Steel River complex about 2 months ago, damaging 2 of the 3 wind turbines. The blades needed significant fiberglass repairs.
It's something you wouldn't expect to do very often. Some of the splits in the turbine were 30 to 50 millimetres long, so they needed to be taken down, repaired and rebalanced before being put up today.
The crew's battling strong winds and cold weather to reinstall the turbines, the same weather conditions the CSIRO normally relishes.
Certainly August is a month where we expect to generate a large part of our winter wind energy, so it's been disappointing to have them down, but they'll be back up in time for our open day on Saturday.
There will be plenty of activities across the day, including the chance to speed date a scientist. Well, at least pepper them with all the tricky science problems you've been pondering, like how often can we expect the wind turbines to come off second best against nature?
1 in 50 year probability of a direct lightning strike, so we're looking for a long trouble-free run now.
Penny Evans, NBN News.
How else do you recover on the Gold Coast? James McManus and Adam McDougall certainly did their fair share today, while last night the McDouble dined out on the Titans' edge. The pair combined to give the Gold Coast plenty of trouble. That was just the start, with more points and other good work the order of the night. But one mad minute has proved costly for Adam McDougall. A head slam was followed up with this on the very next play. Charged on both, combined they add up to a 1-week suspension, time enough for him to make a decision on which overseas rugby team will get his signature.
I change from day to day, so my wife's getting a little bit sick and tired of my indecision, but hopefully in the next week or so I'll make my mind up.
As far as Ben Cross is concerned, medical staff have already passed him fit to return, and this is a day before he sees the surgeon over a broken thumb.
Yeah, definitely. He'll be letting me play, that's for sure. It's been 5 weeks. By the time the game comes around, that'll be 6, so should be all fine.
He's one of several planning on a return against the Raiders in Canberra. That's if they get off the slip and slide in time. It takes a fair bit to get one by Ante Kovic, but the Socceroos squad member has passed on the Jets' initial deal to stay long-term. That was almost 2 months ago, and neither party has entered into talks since, leaving his longer-term future in limbo. The same could be said for his captain Jade North, who's been heavily linked to a deal to join an overseas club after the Olympics.
The last year and a half, I don't think he could have put a foot wrong, really. He's made every representative side. He's captain the championship winning side, so it's almost the perfect time for him to go.
Not as far as a title defence is concerned. Kovic knows if North goes, it leaves a big hole at the back, right in front of him.
You want to go into the season with a defence that you know is going to be rock solid and give confidence to the rest of the team.
As for the season opener at home on Friday night, Kovic can't wait. An F3 derby against the Mariners. The team he reckons is still smarting after that grand final loss.
They're hurting from it, definitely. You know, they're just down the road, and there's always a build-up with a F3 derby. So, you know, they want a point to prove.
Mayfield's Danga Park is named after the family who donated the land to council back in 1910. Now Councillor Barbara Gaudry wants that name changed.
The name Danga has very poor connotations for the Aboriginal community because it was on one of Danga's properties at Myall Creek that 28 women and children, including babies and old men, were slaughtered.
According to the motion Councillor Gaudry submitted to council last night, Henry Danga was also among a group of landowners who formed an association to raise money to defend the murderers in court. She says renaming the park is important for reconciliation, and the Awabakal Lands Council agrees.
We have to forget about the past. We have to move forward, and I think it's a great idea.
Newcastle City Council supported the motion but wants to consult the community before they make any decisions. And here's what some of them had to say.
They should keep it the way it is. There's no reason for them to change it, really.
I think it should be left as Danga Park.
Oh, we call it Danger Park anyway, so it won't change, will it?
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
At midday, nominations closed in 148 council areas across the state. Then the draw to determine the order of names on the ballot paper for the September 13 elections began in front of nervous nominees.
The first candidate is John Tate, Independent.
Port Stephens Council, which elects its own mayor, has recorded the second largest number of nominations for councillors in the state. Newcastle wasn't far behind. The Upper Hunter Council had the least, with 12 to take up 9 positions. One of the tightest mayoral races became even more competitive today. Newcastle councillor Helen O'Neill joined the mix, along with Tony Brown, who's pushed for inner-city lockouts and curfews. That brings the total to 7, including 4 other councillors: Aaron Buman, Marilyn Eade, Michael Osborne and Lord Mayor John Tate. Lake Macquarie is also expected to be highly contested, with MP Greg Piper attempting to hold on to the mayoral job. He'll go up against Labor's John Buckley and Suzanne Pritchard from the Greens. 4 candidates have put their hand up for the top job in Cessnock, while John Clarence is standing down. And with a Labor stranglehold on many state and federal seats in the region, the Liberal candidates have joined forces to form the Hunter Liberals. The local government candidates gathered today for a team photo. Labor's campaign will be launched on Sunday. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Philip Morgan wants to help Hunter dads lose weight and become better role models for their kids. As a father himself, he knows the challenges being a dad presents.
It's actually harder to get the dads on board. Generally, when you involve programs to improve eating and activity in children, it's the mothers that are engaged. And we also know that dads' diets tend to be worse.
In a world-first study, the dads and their primary school-aged children will be given tips to become more active and choose healthier foods over 3 to 6 months.
In the Hunter, only about 20% of children eat the adequate amount of vegetables, and 70% of Hunter men are overweight as well. So if the dads are on board, then it's much easier for the family.
He says it's certainly not about blaming dads for the current obesity epidemic in our children.
Healthy families are families where we have healthy parents, and dads can really probably lift their game in terms of the research and become the ones to be the instigators in the family.
Anyone wanting to join the project needs to contact the researchers in the next few weeks. Penny Evans, NBN News. The University of Newcastle has been selected by the United Nations to run an international chair looking at sustainable urban development in the Asia-Pacific region.
We have UNESCO scholarships that we can give to students from Asia and the Pacific to do PhDs here.
But it won't just be research-based, with practical outcomes already in the works.
One of the new first projects is to design a new eco-city in Jordan, outside Amman.
They'll be advising governments on how design can mitigate environmental impacts in a changing world.
So we need to supply cities, we need to make sure our cities are future-proof and have a design and have strategies in place that make cities that are not less comfortable but use less energy.
That means more public transport and more high-density living and harnessing green power like solar and wind.
The city itself can become the power station. And this will lead to a new type of city, a new type of town.
They've played in the top division for almost 70 years and currently sit third on the ladder, but now Eastern Districts has been dumped.
We've been in 4 grand finals in the last 10 years, and yet they bring in a team last year that couldn't win second division, but yet they're allowed to bring them into Premier Division, and then they decide they don't want 11 teams in the competition.
Easts have endured controversy in the past, while several young players were involved in a brawl this season. But President Matt Jackson says the club has worked hard to change its image.
We've had a bit of trouble with some colts, and we've tried to work through with them, and in the end it just didn't work, so we sort of cut our losses with those guys and let them go.
Turning to league, and St Mary's Gateshead has beaten Singleton in the final of the 28th Newcastle University Sevens tournament. Scone High took out second division in an event which is open to under 16 teams from all over the state. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. It's been another turbulent off-season for the Jets, but a first-round clash with the Mariners is sure to shake off the cobwebs.
The fact that you're playing and you're going for 3 points is something which we all really enjoy the challenge of. So the season's upon us, and we look forward to defending our crown.
Marquee signing Edmundo Zura should play after Jets management spoke to immigration officials again today. His coach believes it will take the Ecuadorian a few weeks to settle in, but he'll waste no time getting him up to speed.
Yeah, Zura will start for sure, and we look forward to him playing. He gives us a real presence up front.
No such luck for Danish import Jasper Hawkinson, ruled out of the season opener with a calf injury. Van Egmond says he has plenty of cover, despite the fact Jade North and James Holland are both in China with the Ollie Roos.
We've got a number of options. Young Patafta obviously is one. We can move Song if we need be.
The rest of the squad is once again hoping to prove the critics wrong.
Again, they've written us off. We've been tipped to come 6th and 7th, so we like the underdog tag.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
Escorted by police, the 65-year-old priest tried to stay out of view as he arrived at Central Local Court this afternoon. Lake Macquarie detectives attached to Strikeforce Georgiana charged Denham with 30 counts of sexual assault and buggery in Sydney this morning.
The offences relate back to the 1970s and 80s. There are 18 young male victims that it will be alleged were aged between 11 and 17 at the time of the various offences.
It's alleged most of the offences took place at St Pius X High School in Adamstown, where the priest was working. Other assaults are alleged to have occurred in a Charlestown church in 1980 and a Taree parish in 1981.
These complaints are new complaints from this year, and they were originally referred from Zimmerman House, which is the unit that has actually been set up by the Maitland-Newcastle Diocese.
Police say the investigation is ongoing and haven't ruled out further charges. Late this afternoon, Denham was refused bail by Sydney Central Local Court. He is due to reappear on the 2nd of October. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
They're working 12-hour shifts, 24 hours a day, because this bridge needs to be finished, and finished fast. Around 40 trains travel along here daily, so the Australian Rail Track Corporation is only allowed to shut down this section of track for 60 hours. The ARTC is upgrading the line between Antine and Muswellbrook to dual rail lines, and every old bridge along the way needs to be torn down and replaced.
By 2012, the demand for Hunter Valley coal is going to double. So ARTC's drive is to increase the capacity of the rail to keep ahead of that demand.
Newcastle Port's chronic bottleneck problems have been well documented, and every part of the coal chain wants to ensure it's not being blamed.
To make sure from our end that the rail is able to meet that demand, the rail going into the port, the rail coming out of the port, that is that the coal keeps flowing from the Gunnedah Basin.
The works are scheduled for completion in May next year. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
Rental homes are once again in short supply, with Newcastle's vacancy rate now half what it was in May. The return of university students for their second semester is apparently to blame. With just 1.5% of rental properties available, low-income earners and people on welfare are struggling to find a home.
There is just so much competition for rental accommodation, and the people we support tend not to be successful when it's a competitive environment.
The fierce demand for homes has also seen rents skyrocket, and that's left many families on the verge of homelessness.
And some families just can't cope any longer, and they have breakdowns, they have family relationship breakdowns. Some people turn to drug and alcohol use. Some people end up on our doorsteps begging for help, and it's a real damn shame.
Welfare organisations say both the federal and state governments need to act.
We need some more affordable accommodation somewhere in this town for families that are really doing it tough.
We have less affordable accommodation in Australia than any other developed industrialised nation, and we have to do something about that urgently because some people are suffering.
The community forum was labelled an old-school town hall meeting, and the locals weren't afraid to have their say.
The most dangerous school crossing is Glendale Road, Glendale.
From 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night, if you pass a primary school, you travel slowly.
The NRMA will use these suggestions to compile a comprehensive list of issues.
We basically need to today understand what are the priorities that the members want us to work on for them, and then go to government of all levels and say this is what our members want.
The completion of the inner city bypass and the F3 link to Branxton were high on the agenda, as was the state of roads leading to the vineyards.
They had the Lovedale long lunch up there recently, and the headlines weren't what a great success it was how bad the roads were.
Other ideas included extra parking at Hunter train stations to encourage more people to use public transport. Learning from the delays surrounding the F3 link was also mentioned in relation to the Turl Street Bridge, a vital link to Newcastle Airport.
So we need to build this four-lane bridge today in today's dollars, because in the future, when it's required, it won't be affordable.
The NRMA is conducting 12 forums around the state before completing its summary. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
From perceived pooch enemy number one to posing pals, what's going on with council rangers?
And you're a dog lover?
Yeah, very much so.
Add a casual new look and colourful wheels and the makeover is complete. It's a fun and friendly new image brought about by public feedback.
And what we've aimed to do is show that we're actually out there to help people in the community, help get dogs home as much as possible, and also to provide a service across a broader range of hours.
The officers also hope the new look will help them do their jobs better.
Allow the public feel like they can approach us rather than the scary rangers.
Artist Judy Naden took inspiration from neighbourhood dogs to create the crazy cartoon critters which feature in the campaign.
Well, dogs are friendly and lovable, and that's what we wanted to portray. And we also wanted to portray that the council rangers are going to take care of them.
But there's just one more thing.
And we don't call them council rangers anymore.
That's right, we're now calling them compliance officers.
That could take some getting used to.
The Jets haven't trained at their official headquarters since before last year's grand final, and as was the case then, a match against the Mariners lies ahead.
We're very happy to train here once before a home game. That's exactly what we did last year. It's just a matter of just trying to ensure that it gets enough time to recover.
And time is what the Jets would like more of. The Olyroos loss means Jade North and James Holland are due back from China and could potentially play tomorrow night, the latter especially.
We're definitely investigating it, as I'm sure all clubs are investigating it, but I suppose if we were playing Saturday or Sunday, it would give us a more realistic option.
So the coach says it's likely he'll stick with the current squad and one still without a captain. He is, however, banking on Edmundo Zura playing, who, as of late today, still needed international clearance.
Estoy contento, muy bien.
Yep, I can't wait to start this game because I've been told for other people this is a big classic match. So I'm ready to score goals.
But the much-talked-about celebration in which he puts on a mask after scoring to honour a friend back home won't be happening.
Zura can't wear his mask because apparently FIFA don't allow it, but all of a sudden Vuka can play because it's not a FIFA game. So I don't know. It seems like a real mess, to be honest with you.
Vukovic was given a long suspension for striking a referee in last season's grand final, but a loophole will allow him to play, and what a game to make a comeback. Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
According to the Great Northern Hotel licensee, the pub's proximity to the Newcastle train station and Enterprise Park make it a soft target for violent and intoxicated underage youths.
They walk past the door, they'll abuse us. Some will walk past with drinks in their hand, bottles. We've seen young girls walking across with litre bottles of Jim Beam across the street. We can do nothing about it.
And how old are we talking?
Young girls, 13, 14, 15.
He says gangs of young teens regularly vandalise the building, smashing windows. They also start fights in the park and engage in a range of antisocial behaviour.
We've caught them running over cars, actually running physically over the cars, yet we can do nothing.
All this is going on as the hotel plans to revamp its image with a multi-million-dollar redevelopment, which will see its legendary Crystal Room reopened for functions, a rooftop bar and restaurant built, and that's not all.
96 ensuite bedrooms and a 21-unit block which will go just behind us in the car park area. And it's going to be a major thing for Newcastle because we're going to be employing more people, quite clearly.
The final plans go before Council for approval mid-September. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Still a little shell-shocked, manager Wayne Field talked us through this morning's events. He was greeted by police at work at 1:30 a.m. after learning Catholic Care had become the target of thieves.
This door was wide open, it had been kicked through from here, busted the door jamb.
And the offenders seemed to know what they were after, locating the key to the safe.
The office was pretty well ransacked, there was stuff thrown all over the place. The safe door was wide open, all the contents are emptied.
Petty cash and fuel cards were stolen, but worst of all, they found the keys for 5 Catholic Care vehicles. They took off with 2 grey-green coloured Commodores, plus all the other keys.
Is where the station wagon was parked at the very end.
The staff strive to improve the lives of young people in need through counselling and support services and rely on the cars to transport 60 clients.
We don't get a lot of funding from the government, and what little we do get is we have to manage really tightly. So an incident like this really knocks us about a little.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Hunter tourism operators might need to brush up on their Mandarin and Hindi if a locally devised plan to get more international tourists here pays off. India and China have been identified as new markets for the region and lucrative ones as well.
With China, there's just a higher percentage of people that have got more money to spend.
Hunter Tourism wants $750,000 in state money to help finance a new campaign, and one it expects should better service the 5 local areas, replacing the broader New South Wales promotion. It could also mean a partnership with the Newcastle Jets through their Asian Cup series at the end of this season.
We can double their campaign funds, so it's a really good opportunity now to not just focus purely on tourism marketing.
Things are being approached from a different perspective too in wine country, with boutique accommodation providers and competitors forming a new alliance in what they call an already saturated market.
To be able to compete on a level playing field, we did have to come together and collaborate in this area.
And at Seal Rocks, how's this for a room with a view? National Parks and Wildlife has done what they couldn't do at Nobby's, restore the historic Lighthouse Cottage into holiday accommodation.
They need to have life, and then they need to have air going through them, circulation and things like that.
There'll be an open day tomorrow. Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
Not one to give too much away at the best of times, Brian Smith wasn't about to start today, but he must be pleased to have some of his big men back. Jesse Royal, Danny Wicks and Ben Cross are all set to return from injury for Sunday's match in Canberra, the one-time home of the Origin prop.
I just can't wait, mate, to get out there and get a good month of footy under my belt before semis, hopefully.
It's a clear message, though, that the coach is preparing to fight fire with fire.
Don't underestimate, I should say, Canberra's toughness simply because they've played some attractive footy.
Canberra racked up 74 points in hammering Penrith at the weekend, and that'd be enough to spook the best of them. But it's up the middle Newcastle is planning to win this match. So much so, they're preparing to carry an extra forward into the game, with half Scott Giroux the one squeezed out. The makeup of the outside backs also remains open to speculation, with Aku Uate among those in the mix.
All of those guys are replacing somebody. You can work out who's replacing who.
Forward Mark Tafua won't be there. He's staying home for the pending birth of his first child, but those who are heading south understand just what's at stake.
Our season sort of doesn't ride on this game, but there are a lot of hinges on it where we possibly finished in the top 8.
It just wouldn't be a season opener for Newcastle without some sort of drama, but at least this time around it's all good news. James Holland, the midfielder who wasn't used in the disappointing Olympic campaign, touched down in Sydney after lunch and will be playing football for Newcastle tonight after dinner. Captain Jade North won't be, after playing in all 3 games in China. Edmundo Zura, however, will start in tonight's game in his much-anticipated debut for the club after getting the all-important international clearance from Ecuador. New recruit Kaz Patafta to make his A-League debut from the bench for the Big Derby Grand Final rematch. And how must Mariners keeper Danny Vukovic be feeling right now? Through a controversial loophole, he's able to play tonight, despite still being technically suspended after striking the referee in last year's grand final.
I think I'm lucky to be there more than the Mariners are lucky to have me, but yeah, it's great. It's a bit weird how it's all turned out.
No arguments from the Jets camp. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Last year, we took you inside some of Newcastle's squats, where groups of up to 20 people were living at any one time.
When places like the Palais and the Empire were going, there was an element of wanting to be there. There was a lot of younger fellas there that want to rebel against their families.
Their closure has forced many of the city's homeless to re-evaluate their lives.
What is exciting is they're actually realising themselves that living on the street ain't the way to go, and they are trying to help themselves.
Organisations like Wesley Newcastle City Mission have helped them move on.
We have housed quite a number of actual homeless people that were regular squat users. We've also sent a number of them to different organisations for drug and alcohol problems.
They say there's now half the number of people squatting in Newcastle.
We've got a number of 30-year-old guys that are homeless, and it's surprising that we've still got quite a lot of female homeless people.
Instead of living in larger squats, some moved into this house at Cooks Hill, but police have since cleared them out and the property has been secured. Now they're on the move again, finding other vacant buildings to live. Madeline Bond, NBN News. Two weeks ago, Bishop Michael Malone apologised to victims of sexual abuse at the hands of the clergy. Today, he expressed his anguish following the recent arrests of 2 Hunter priests.
That kind of news, when it comes, particularly on the coattails of other incidents that have happened in the church over the years, just causes you to feel pretty flat.
On Thursday, Father John Denham was charged with 30 counts of sexual assault for crimes allegedly committed in the Hunter and Taree during the 70s and 80s. Then yesterday, his Vicar General Tom Brennan was charged with perverting the course of justice.
And I knew that these other matters were coming, so in a sense, whilst I was giving the apology, does not necessarily mean it was trying to gain brownie points against bad news coming later on.
The bishop says he won't tolerate sexual abuse in the clergy.
On my watch, I am committed to eradicating this evil from the church.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
After a memorable night, it was back to work for 16-year-old Ben Kantorowski today.
It was unbelievable. There was a very big crowd there, there was lots of supporters, and it's just a magnificent feeling.
Despite his tender years, the youngster certainly didn't look out of place against some opponents twice his age.
I was pretty excited just to be playing at first, and then once the sort of first touch sort of got out of the way, I was really excited just to be playing.
Regular captain Jade North was back with his teammates today after the Olympics, but admitted it may not be for long.
There's certainly some stuff in that's hopefully getting done while we speak, but got to keep my cards close to my chest. So.
He's preparing to play for the Jets next weekend in Perth, but with only weeks remaining to secure an overseas transfer, Any deal to secure his early release from Newcastle will need to come soon.
Con did mention that he would never stand in my way, so let's see if it happens, and they bring the right deal to the table.
We've got to get these young guys and girls out there and train them up. You never know, mate, they could be beside me in London.
The Business Chamber is prepared to wipe the slate clean if the newly elected councillors commit to working together and not just in their own chambers.
The region is unique in that we do have so many local government councils, and it's just foolhardy for them not to work closer.
Improving safety and upgrading ageing infrastructure should also be a priority.
The Chamber's members will be looking for some innovative practices in regard to that, rather than just the easy option of increasing rates.
Karen Howard believes the federal government's carbon trading scheme could have serious repercussions for industry across the region.
Us as a region are going to be substantially impacted on that scheme, and we're very interested in the candidates' views on that.
Meanwhile, Labor has put forward its youngest ever team for the Newcastle election, launching its policies today.
We want to stop the blame game and make sure that our local government representatives and our state and federal representatives work together for the betterment of all the city.
Policies from other candidates are expected to be detailed in coming weeks. Penny Evans, NBN News.
He's got a compression on the top of his head. He's got a neck brace on. Had a bit of pins and needles in his hand or arm.
Semi-final fever and a dose of winter sun had a strong crowd at Harker Oval as Adrian McNabb led Cessnock out for his 150th game as a goanna. West had their own party plans, and what a way to start. Sam Wooden's 60-metre bust cut Cessnock wide open, and Wes Tillett had the legs to finish a length of the field effort. When Jermaine Ale gave the Goies the run around for the first of his 2 tries, West opened a 12-0 lead. Willie Paleo put his shoulder into it. Paul Karam was all finesse as he put Dean McBain over. When Player of the Year Nathan Hinton raced in before the break, West fans were already booking their seats for Grand Final day. The second half was much like the first, with Wooden having a field day. Cut down just short of the line, he allowed Wes Tillett to cross for a double. While the fullback ended it with another long-range special as the Rosellas comfortably advanced to the decider in 2 weeks. Cessnock left to pick up the pieces. They'll now play Central Charlestown, who demolished Macquarie yesterday.